Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's YouTube show. So, I pressed the button a little bit too soon.
Deb got trigger happy. So we're 2 minutes early, so we can just fill in 2 minutes of time.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
It's really, really good to have you with us. It's great to be here this evening. And so first of all, to kick off our show, we've got a great show actually tonight. We've got a great question that somebody has asked us to answer. And then we're going to be talking about human psychological needs and what we've been seeing around those. So I think that's going to be a little bit of an interesting topic and an interesting conversation. And just to kick us off, I want to say that our retreat, the one in February, is now full. We did put something out on the newsletter. We had 2 places left when we put the newsletter out, but very, very quickly those places were filled. So if you want to come on our next retreat and don't want to miss out, that one is in June. So I'll put a link. I think there is a link to the website anyway underneath this video. So, go and find us there and book in for June, because we would hate you to miss out.
Yes. Yeah. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was.
By the time we'd finished writing the newsletter, the places were virtually filled.
Yeah.
So the other programs we've got coming up, which is one of our favorites, I think, is the mentoring program. And that is starting. We've actually got one starting in February and one starting in March. So if you are interested in the mentoring, we would love to hear from you. And if you're on our mailing list, because yesterday was my birthday, I put out a special mailing list gift to everyone. That if you're on our mailing list and you reply to our newsletter before the end of January, you can claim £50 off the mentoring program. If you're not on our mailing list,
get on it quick.
Get on it now, and we'll apply the same for you. So join our mailing list if you're not on it, or take advantage of the gift that I sent out today as part of my birthday celebrations. So our mentoring program is just fantastic. It's 3 months together in this conversation, and it is just a bundle of fun. We've actually got the people that are currently on it are coming. In fact, they're on their way right now.
Yes, we might see them through the window in a minute. They might turn up.
They might turn up in the background. They're coming to join us for a day together tomorrow as part of the mentoring face-to-face time, and it's just going to be an absolute blast. So
looking forward to having a really nice day tomorrow. Yeah,
and the other thing that's coming up very soon in February is our next 5-day free challenge. We're doing another self-love challenge for 5 days from the 10th of February.
You know how much we love challenges.
We love them ever such a lot. So if you're interested in joining in that, you can sign up to that on our website as well under free resources. If you're already on our mailing list, you will get access to that anyway. But if you're not on our mailing list and you would like access, you can go and sign up and get involved with that too. So that's coming up in February.
Yeah, so it would be great to have you with us for something.
Yeah, as always, lots and lots and lots and lots going on.
Yeah, we never stay still.
No, we tend not to.
So shall we kick off the show tonight?
Yeah, we'll get going, shall we?
Right, so as always, we're going to be starting with our living and learning, and now we've added in what we are loving as well, which is really exciting. So Beck. No, I'm only joking. I knew that.
Cheat. When it's in purple, Deb, you have to start.
I know. I just thought I'd see what you did if I said that.
Well, I'll start if you like. I might steal your living and learning.
Yeah, you might. So, no, it's fine. So I'm going to share with you what I have been living and learning this week and what I am loving too. So, as I said, we absolutely love challenges. It's something that we do a lot in our Facebook group. So if you're into challenges and you're not in our Facebook group, come and join us, because we've got the 5 days coming up and we also do a weekly challenge. And one of the reasons that I love challenges so much, and one of the reasons that we use this a lot, is because that was definitely for me the way that I got curious around this understanding. We were just on a mentoring call about an hour ago before we came onto here, and we were talking about raising our awareness of what it is we do and I can look back and see how many things I did in my life just on autopilot without even realizing that I was doing those things. And one of the things for me that, like, playing around with these challenges, what it does is it raises my awareness of what it is I'm doing. We did it during the one of the mentoring, we were talking about random acts of kindness and sending people out to do a random act of kindness. And the feedback from that was, people were watching what they were doing and kind of noticing where there were places that they could be kinder out in the world. And it's not really about what it is you do. It's not about what was that random act of kindness. It's not about one-upmanship and being kinder than other people. It is about raising your awareness of those places that we don't even notice that there's an opportunity to be kind. And it might be being kind to ourselves, or it might be being kind to someone else. But when we have that, when we talk about those things and we have them in our minds and we've kind of looked at them, we begin to notice where that's happening in life. And we begin to, for me, it opens my mind to possibility, and it opens my mind to what it is I'm getting up to. So because we have been setting people challenges, and because we have been doing the challenges in a weekly challenge in the Facebook group, it's kind of it's ramped up how much I play around with those challenges myself personally, and the things I challenge myself to. So my living this week has very much been around noticing how much my awareness goes up when I am personally playing in those ways. And what I've learned from that, talking to other people around these challenges, is how differently we see these things, and how different people process these kinds of things differently and get different things out of them. And that is something that I just think it's brilliant. I think it's great that playing around in this arena yourself, playing around with what it is, challenging yourself, or whatever makes sense to you, when we go inwards, when we get into this conversation, and when we play in this arena, it is amazing what happens. And it is amazing how our own wisdom shows up for us in some of the things that people have reported back, some of the conversations I've had with people around these challenges. Things happen that I was like, wow, I didn't realize that could happen. I would never have seen it like that. And it's kind of that coming together. When we come together in these ways, the learning is enormous, I think, for all of us. So I have been reminded again how beautiful it is when we come together to explore in these ways around these challenges. So that's kind of been my living and learning. And then I have been loving the people this week who have been joining in those challenges with us. The comments that have been on Facebook, the private messages I've had about them, the comments that were in the mentoring that we did. So I'm just going to kind of mention a few people. I know Colette Dennis is always all over pretty much everything that we do, and Frank has been joining in lots of the stuff that we're doing, and Anne Buckingham, she's been getting all over our stuff as well and enjoying it. And Helen Goff, she's been I'm loving you all. I'm loving the interaction we're having. I'm loving the learning that we're doing together.
Yeah, it's really really nice to see when we do those challenges, the engagement and the interaction, and from the point of view of what a difference it makes for somebody in their lives. And that's what you kind of hear when you kind of read in their comments, or they're sending us messages, exactly like Deb's kind of been saying with her own example, the changes that come when people step up and take responsibility and do the challenges and play with it, have fun with it, see something new, become aware. So Colette's commented, see, she's with us as always. The lovely Colette, we love you too. Yeah, and it is just that kind of that level of engagement in life is what makes the biggest difference for us. And so we see that's what's also happening for the people that are kind of stepping up and joining in and being engaged and having a go. And I'm sure, the other thing mini shout out to those of you that are joining in but haven't quite got to the stage where you're brave enough to comment yet, because I'm sure there will be people doing that too. And when you're ready to comment, we'll name you on the show as well. So,
because if you never want to be named,
we might not. Who knows? So
it's named and gloried, not named and shamed. This is named and gloried, because definitely one of the things that I have seen through this is it's that whole step up and take responsibility whilst knowing you're not responsible. It really feels to me like I get choices and opportunities, and I get invitations from the universe to kind of do stuff and experiment and play in this amazing world that I've been born into. And for me, kind of this understanding shows me that I can step up to that whilst knowing that I'm safe, whilst knowing that I'm okay. It's like playing in a huge soft play area. I know the universe has got my back. I know that there is a deeper truth of me that means that I am always okay. And I'm not responsible. I don't have to play God. I don't have to take everything on my own shoulders. So that for me is, one of the most beautiful learnings ever, that we can step up and take responsibility whilst knowing we are not responsible. It makes this an amazing game to play. And when we get together and we play together, all sorts of brilliant things come out of it, don't they? You might have guessed we're having a lot of fun at the moment. Not that we don't always, but...
Well, that seems to be how our life has... we've set ourselves up to have a life like that, haven't we, really?
We definitely have. On a call, I don't know, within the last week anyway, Beck said something amazing on one of the calls that literally I was like, whoa, that is so what we are doing here. What was it you said, Beck?
It was so amazing.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I can. She said we have created a life within this conversation. And it really feels like we have done that. It really seems as if we have created our lives doing things that we love all day in ways we love doing it. I know when we kind of talk to you about what we've got coming up, retreats and mentoring and the facilitator training, anything that we talk about that's coming up, we kind of say, oh, it's our favorite thing. And it is simply because there genuinely isn't much. I can't even think of anything that I've done today that I haven't loved doing. I can't think of a thing in this business that we do. Even to be honest, when I'm playing around with the website and in the back end of our business, that kind of side of the behind the scenes stuff, we're always laughing and having fun. So I honestly, hand on heart, can't think of anything we do in our business that we are sitting there, oh, this is the bit we just have to do.
No.
I just can't think of anything. So it really feels like over the last couple of years, we have genuinely created and crafted a really, truly beautiful life. And it feels like we can step up to that from our 100% humanness and play in that arena, whilst knowing that we're 100% spiritual and there's something deeper about us. And at some point, these bodies and the way we are in this way isn't always going to be like this, but that's okay too. So it is just amazing, the life we've created for ourselves, isn't it? And we invite you to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. So my living and learning and loving this week. So I think, what Deb kind of touched on and started there about the creating a life inside this conversation. That has definitely been the basis of my learning this week, because what I've seen is, I think sometimes we share that kind of stuff and it sounds therefore like we don't have days where we're not feeling great, or we don't have moments where something happens with, I don't know, a friend or a message we get or whatever it might be. I think for me, what I've really seen again in the last week is how those things can happen. Like I have had in the last week a lot of insecure thinking. Like I've had a lot of stuff going through my head, really insecure, and maybe I could list a whole host of the, my sister this, my partner that, Deb should have this, Deb shouldn't have that, all those. Maybe it's not even that. I can't remember. I can't
imagine it would have been me
now.
No, I can't imagine it would have been me.
It wasn't Deb. No, but it's those things that really take hold and feel very real.
Yeah.
And so it isn't, when we're talking about creating a life inside this conversation, I don't think for me that means that's it. I am never going to have an insecure thought again, and I'm never going to really feel insecure, like have some real moments of insecurity. And we talk a lot about self-love and how relationships work, and I can really see when I get insecure thinking, the kind of quality of my relationship just takes a massive nosedive. You know, I'm in my head. Yeah, I'm in my head going, my partner should have this, my sister didn't that, or whatever it might be. And I can see how much that goes down. But what I love, and the reason we've created a life inside this conversation, the reason that's my learning this week, is when that does happen, I notice that it doesn't take a nosedive to the place that I used to be.
Yeah.
I don't go, it looks really serious and really real. And for a moment, I'm lost in it. And I might even, you know, sometimes do something and think, damn, that came from an insecure thought. And in a moment when that thought has passed, or in a day or whenever it is, I'm going to look at the action and really wish I hadn't done that. And, you know, there's probably some apologies to make and those kinds of things. But what I notice is that the depth to which I get lost in that, the depth to which my relationships sort of suffer and take a nosedive, is just not what it used to be. I don't I get caught in it. I get in that moment of it feels really strong and really real, and it looks like I should fix my partner or tell Deb where she's done something wrong or have a go at Lucy or whatever it might be. And I might for a moment even go there. And then I notice that I'm inside this conversation. My life sits in this conversation. So something comes to me and I'm like, a lot of the time it is just hold your tongue and don't breathe right now. Just hold for a moment and don't move from here until it's passed. And sometimes that's the most that I've got, is to just stay still with it and to know that taking action from here is going to be, you know, something I might regret in a minute or two. And I've really seen that again this week. Over the last week, I've had lots of that kind of going on. And I've just been holding myself in a space of don't act from here. Don't kind of make decisions or do rash things from here, because you know what's going on for you isn't something that's real. It isn't something that in a week's time is going to be important. It's going to have passed, and you're going to be looking back over the last week and, oh, look what you did with that insecure thought. Look what you did with that insecure thought. And just the knowing of that somehow means that I don't behave quite the way I used to in, you know, in times past when I had all sorts of relationship messes that I'd gotten into and all sorts of webs to untangle. I don't quite, you know, I don't go, you know, if it was I'm doing all of this, because it can sometimes look like it's a level thing. I don't go all the way back down here. I kind of maybe drop a rung or two on the ladder, because
I think from watching you come back more quickly as well. I don't think you stay in those places.
No.
And I think we have a lot less tolerance for being in those places.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's that I used to live my life inside a different conversation. And the conversation was what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
And that was how I lived my life, taking everything up here as real and true and acting accordingly. And now, because my life is inside this conversation, the principles, the understanding of who we really are, I don't take as much notice of this. And when it looks really real, there's still a bit of that conversation in me that's going, you know, it's not. You know, this isn't the place you want to be going with this. And if the only thing that makes sense right now is to not do anything, then don't do anything. Because when something clears, when that insecurity drops, because it will, it's inevitable. Like, thoughts do not stick around.
No, we don't stay feeling insecure forever, do we?
We can try and hold on to them. And, you know, the more I've seen myself go into stories and play into stuff over the last week and go, oh, yeah, because when they said this, they meant this, and then this happened, and that didn't happen, and that wasn't right. And I can feel that in me when I'm going into that story, and it doesn't feel nice. And so sometimes the most I can do is just stop and go, don't go any further down that rabbit hole. And in a minute, you'll be able to move backwards and move out of it. But just wait it out if that's all you can do. And it has been really, really amazing to see again how the life inside this conversation helps in those times. Because I don't think that we stop having those kinds of thoughts or those kinds of experiences, or the sorts of things that someone might, on paper, it looks like they've done something wrong. I think those things can still happen as part of our lives, but it's the knowing that inside this conversation, we don't have to have the tolerance for it that we used to. So that's my living and learning.
Ooh, what are you loving?
And what am I loving? I tell you what I'm loving. I'm absolutely loving our mini mentoring. We just had, like Deb said just before we came on this call earlier this afternoon, we had
amazing group.
Beautiful group. It was actually the third of the calls that we do. We do 3 calls on the mini mentoring, but we did a bonus surprise for everyone, and we're having a bonus call next week. So it wasn't our final call, which I was really thankful for.
I think that bonus might have been for us as much as See what I mean about setting up a life we love.
Yeah. So I'm absolutely loving our mini mentorees. They're a fantastic
shout out for
group.
our brilliant mini mentees.
Yeah,
you're amazing.
They're a lovely group, and we've had some really beautiful conversations, some great questions, some great comments. We set them all some homework last week, and they kind of all reported in this week, and the stuff that people have been out in the world doing has been absolutely beautiful to listen to. And it's mini mentoring because it's a mini version of our mentoring program. And as we mentioned at the beginning, we love our mentoring, and we've got a couple of our mentorees on the full program coming to hang out with us for the day tomorrow. So I'm watching the mini mentoring program. I want you all to be full mentorees, and we get to hang out with you for 3 whole months. But I've been absolutely loving the mini mentoring, and it's especially when I was kind of saying about my living and learning, that there's been this massive insecure thinking in my head this last week. And what I find when I go on those kinds of calls and this kind of call is, because we are in the conversation of taking responsibility whilst knowing we're not responsible. I'm responsible to turn up here and share something, as I am on the mini mentoring, because they're programs that we've said to people we're doing, we're committed to them. It's our responsibility to turn up and share something. And yet I know I'm not responsible. I'm not responsible for what comes through me and what gets said and how it gets shared. But somehow the having to turn up for a call that we've agreed to do gets me out of my head, gets me out of that zone of having so much thinking on my mind. And I have to have no tolerance for it in order to sit here and go, right, what am I going to share today? I've got no tolerance for the insecure thinking that's telling me I can't do this and all that kind of thing. I have to take responsibility and show up and share something. So I've absolutely been loving the mini mentoring, because it's kind of got me out of my head and just out speaking, which is for me is the biggest part of this conversation that I love, is actually just sharing it and just kind of constantly be talking it and hearing it. And I
definitely think kind of part of creating a life that is inside this conversation is that we are continually being brought back, continually being pointed back to our own wisdom, pointed back inside, pointing back to look in that direction. So oh, that's lovely. So you guys, we love you. Okay, so we had a question this week, a really lovely lady. She was telling me that her stress and anxiety levels are, a little bit high right now. And she was like, oh, please, she sent me a text and say, please, can you help? So I said that we would try and say something on this. So if you are here live, it's you know who you are. Hi, and I hope you're feeling a little bit better. And if you're not watching it live, I dare say you're going to catch up with the replay. So big hug, lots of love, and I hope that as thought does, some of this has maybe passed for you already. But anyway, I know, stress and anxiety is a huge thing in our society these days. Loads and loads of people feel very stressed and very anxious. And I think one of the first things to say is it's quite normal to have kind of some level of stress and anxiety. And I think it only becomes a problem when we spend prolonged amounts of time in those places, which I guess, this lady, that's what she's kind of saying. I seem to live here in this stress and anxiety more than I live anywhere else. And I think that me and Beck can both kind of say, put our hands up and say, there definitely was a time in my life where I lived way more in stress and anxiety than I lived anywhere else. You know, everything, I felt like I was on high alert all the time, and everything, you know, I had to check everything and everything was on me. And one of the things, you know, the question was, have you got any tips on how to deal with stress and anxiety? And I'm guessing, you know, if you've been around us very much, if you've been in this conversation, we don't do the 7 steps to no more anxiety. We don't kind of do that sort of thing. But one of the things that I will say that I've noticed massively is that a byproduct of just being in this conversation has been that it is pretty rare that I feel very stressed or anxious these days. And a little bit like Beck was saying about the 0 tolerance, what I have noticed is that if I feel stressed and anxious, I really don't care. You know, I'm not interested. I know that it will pass. I know that it's thinking in that moment. And I know that, you know, I was designed as a human being, if you like, to feel all sorts of everything. And it's kind of like, if that is what I'm feeling in this moment, then it's okay to feel that in this moment. You know, my heart is strong enough to do that. And I think that's one of the things, you know, when I used to get anxious about things, it used to be, I would get into not a great feeling and I would feel somehow I had to protect myself or something had to be different so I was okay. And I've begun to see that that isn't the case. You know, I'm way more resilient. I'm way stronger than I gave myself credit for. And if I just allow what is to be, then I find that I'm okay, even while whatever it is happening. You know, there is a deeper okayness within me, something more to me than meets the eye. And I don't know if anything is coming to you.
Yeah, I'm going to go against all the rules, actually.
Oh, you're going to give them tips?
Yeah. No, even though we don't kind of do the 3 steps of this, there's actually 3 things that come up for me when somebody asks that, and maybe they're tips or maybe they're not quite, but I think within the kind of conversation we have, it will make sense. So for me, the first one is absolutely and always to be kind to yourself. Like, start from being kind to yourself, because I know one of the things for me, I think it was anxiety very much more for me, but you know, stress and nervousness, similar kinds of things. And one of the things that I notice I don't do anywhere near as much now, but I absolutely used to do this massively, was have, let's say, a layer of anxiety about such and such. Then I would have a layer of anxiety about the fact that I was anxious, and then a layer of anxiety about the fact that I couldn't deal with it, and so on and so on. And as you can imagine, you know,
it was a layer cake.
It was a whole layer of anxiety after anxiety. And so for me, the first thing, if there is such a thing as a tip, my first one would be start with being kind to yourself. And kind of at least kind of maybe take 1 or 2 of those layers off the top, because they're just not going to help. And we kind of know that, don't we? We kind of know that the more we kind of wind ourselves up about what we should know better and should be better at, the more we build into that anxiety or stress. So that's tip 1. Totally going against the rules, aren't I? Then I think the second thing that I would absolutely 100% encourage you to do time and time again is come back to understanding how we work.
Yeah.
Come right back to the basics of this conversation, the building blocks, what we call the 3 principles, that we have thought, that we have a consciousness, a kind of an awareness that brings that thought to life, and that there is a bigger power here. There's something, a creative essence of life that runs all of that kind of gives us that underlying okayness. But when we have a thought and believe it to be true, we will feel what we think. Exactly like I was talking about with my insecure thinking. I wasn't feeling so great because I was believing it to be true. And that is how we work. And it is that simple. And I would always recommend coming back to that simplicity. When we're lost in stress and anxiety, or even if it's sort of past now and you're going, right, well, if that happens again, what do I need to know? Know that thought creates feelings. Know that you live in the experience of what you're thinking, and know that it passes. I keep coming back to that. You can't know that enough as far as I'm concerned. Like, you just can't, because what inevitably happens is we know it's somewhere here, and then this comes along and we don't know it here.
Yeah.
So look to see it here too, and here, and here, and here, and here. Look to know it every single time you think you don't. Every time you think, oh, this is anxiety, this is stress, this isn't my thinking, this is something else. Come back and know it again.
Because I think we can think we know. And so we wrote, that was in our blog. Was that this week or?
I know the principles, but yes, it was our vlog.
If you look, if you haven't looked at it, if you haven't listened to our vlog this week, it's the title is I Know the Principles, but, and we talked a little bit about then, because it's really, really easy for us to think we know something, so then not get curious around that. But if we are feeling, if you're feeling stressed and anxious and you kind of go, well, I know the principles, take a breath and actually look at that again. Do you? Does this really look to you in this moment as if that is thought? And look at it again. And I know, sometimes it can be that physical things happen in the world. Our car can, we can have a burst tire on our car, we can have a leaky roof, we can have a bill that comes in unexpectedly. And so, if you go, well, that isn't my thinking, that is real, that is something actually that I need to deal with, and it's real, and that is what is making me feel stressed and anxious. I like all this stuff you're saying about thought, but what about this real thing? And that again is coming back to, how is experience created? Experience is created via these principles. That's how life works. And if we didn't have that, how would you even have the capability to know that your car has burst a tire? You wouldn't know it if you didn't have awareness, if you didn't have thinking, and if you didn't have the thought, this is a bad thing and I don't want it. It would not be a bad thing. It would simply be a leaky roof, a burst tire. It wouldn't be the thing that you're thinking is making it out to be. And once we begin to kind of look to that place in our mind, what I'm playing around with, we talked a lot about, the challenges and things that we're doing. And one of the things that I'm playing around with is I don't mind within my own mind. And I notice, if things don't happen the way that I want them to be, I notice that I mind. It's kind of like my thinking comments on it and kind of is, well, that shouldn't have happened. You shouldn't have done that. You should know better. I don't like that it happened like that. It shouldn't be like that. Some version of me minding that has happened. A leaky roof, my car breaking down, being late for a call, whatever it is, this voice can comment on it, and it's kind of like, well, actually, I do mind about that. I actually do mind that the roof leaks. I haven't got enough money to pay and mend the leak. I mind. And it's beginning to kind of look to that place within me where I can see that if I let go of minding, what comes up then? And our logical mind will kind of say, well, if I let go of minding, it'll mean that, I won't bother to fix the roof and the leak will get worse and I'll owe more money or blah, 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 whatever it is. Our logical mind will argue against that. And kind of what we are inviting you here to do is get a little bit curious about that and kind of see what happens if you can find peace within you and not mind. Because once we go to that place of not minding, you might be pleasantly surprised to blown away, amazed what can happen when you open your mind. And I'm kind of aware that I interrupted and you've done 2.
I had 3, yeah.
And I would hate anyone to miss the third step.
Well, actually, the third tip actually sits really nicely with where you were kind of going and what you were saying there, because it is know yourself, and it's to my mind, the way when I was talking about kind of coming back to the basics of thought and the principles, that's the system that underlies all of this. And every single one of us operate on the same system. And that is just the same no matter who we are or what's going on. And then for me, what kind of happens is that individually we'll have certain things that are kind of personal to us. Like I might have insecure thinking about one thing that has never bothered Deb ever once in her life. And so then the third thing for me is to know myself there, is to know what's kind of going on for me, to start to see the places where I can get tripped up and become familiar. And that for me goes to what Deb was talking about there, about the challenges and the kind of being curious and seeing what we can see, because there'll be things that are happening for you around stress, anxiety, nervousness that I maybe have never personally experienced. And the more you get to know you around that stuff, the more you get familiar with what is it that trips me up? And is there a different way of seeing it? Is there something I can understand differently here? Can I be curious about having a new experience? The more that happens for you, that like the reason we don't give tips really is because for that reason, because it will be personal to you and you'll have your own wisdom on how to know yourself, how to be curious, what way to be challenging yourself. So we don't really do the tips and advice in quite that way, because you're the expert on you. And where I might have my insecurities about my things, if you've never had that, you're not going to know necessarily what the right thing for me to do is around that, and to where to challenge myself and where to be curious, and vice versa. Like, you get to know yourself, get to see the areas that you need to challenge yourself on, and where it is that you can have a new experience of life. Because that's different for each and every one of us. It sits on the same platform of thought creates feelings, but it will be your thoughts and your feelings. Now, I've no doubt that, there are people that have never, ever had one single nervous thought about driving. I mean, that blows my mind. Imagine being someone that can drive with no anxiety whatsoever. That's amazing. And yet, that's been something for me that I've kind of seen some different stuff on and been playful with and gotten curious about. And so I'm not going to be able to go, right, when you're nervous, this is the 10 steps to, because you might never have been nervous about driving. So it's irrelevant. It's relevant for me and my journey, my experience. So my kind of third tip is to know yourself, to get to know what it is that, what is the universe inviting you to see here? What is it you can have, in what way can you challenge yourself or be playful or curious? So that's kind of they were my 3 tips.
And something's occurring to me around the first thing that you said about being kind to yourself. And I know a little while ago we were having a conversation and we were talking about, saying yes to things and saying no to things. And we were talking about how saying no to something from a place of integrity is kind of like a yes. That is our yes when we're actually saying no. It's a little bit of a paradoxical thing. And I was kind of thinking about the kindness. And to me, that is tied up in knowing yourself, because sometimes being kind to yourself is letting yourself off the hook. And sometimes being kind to yourself is kind of kicking yourself up the bum a little bit and saying, no, this is a moment to step up. And knowing yourself is knowing the difference, knowing which one to do, because beating ourselves up and trying to force ourselves and making ourselves miserable isn't being kind, but kind of letting ourselves off when we know full well there's more in us. And if we could use a bit of courage and push ourselves, there's more we can do here. And definitely the knowing of, for me, the challenges and the getting to know myself is making it clearer and clearer to me when the times are to say, yeah, no, Deb, step up here. This is a moment to step up. And no, Deb, this is a moment to just step back and rest and give yourself time to take a breath and let yourself off the hook, and knowing the difference. So
so there you go, there's some tips for you.
And we always we love your questions, we love your comments, we love hearing from you. So please feel free, if anything is coming up for you around this, feel free to comment under this video. We will get back to you. We will answer any comments. And we do this show every week. So if you want us to talk about something particular that's coming up for you, we are more than happy to do that. We just love hearing from you. In our living, learning and loving, we said we love all the people that are interacting, and kind of it's great. It's really, really good. So we're going to be moving on to our topic now. So I can't spell the word, so I hope it was spelled right. I actually had to copy how Beck had spelled it to put it on here, but it was psychological needs. And it was something during some of the challenges and the way, some of the things that I've been doing, some of the living and learning that I was doing, I kind of noticed for myself, I had a little bit of an insight around the fact that human psychological needs look to me like they're made up. They're thought-created things that we can have this zero tolerance around. And I'm just I'm playing with that and getting curious about it with my own stuff. And obviously, we interact with quite a lot of people. And at the moment, we're having a lot of calls with some amazing people, having some great conversations. And I'm noticing how similar as human beings we are. And like Beck was saying earlier, her stuff was driving and stuff. But we have a lot of similar, we can get stressed and anxious. Human beings get stressed and anxious, and human beings get bored, and human beings, I don't know, we go to the same places a lot. And I was kind of reflecting on when I first got into a place of feeling that my life was really, really messy and not a life I wanted it to be, and I was struggling. I did a few courses, I did a few things with people, and they mentioned things like, setting up boundaries. And they talked about that I needed to have my needs met. I needed to feel love, and I needed companionship. And I don't know, they just talked about various things that human beings need psychologically to be okay. And I have noticed, I have had conversations with people about babies and things like this. And I'm not saying here that I definitely think that if babies are loved and encouraged, they flourish and do well. But I've also noticed that I can tell myself the story that I need something and then really feel like I lack because I haven't got that, and what I'm kind of playing around with, and what I would really love to kind of open this conversation around is, is that true that I actually need that thing to feel okay? And one of the things that I have really seen since I've come into this conversation is that as human beings, we, as 100% human and 100% spiritual, we show up here lacking nothing. This game, this experience that we've got isn't about completing ourselves. We are already whole and complete. We're not here to gain anything, and we can't possibly lose anything. That's not what this is about. And so to me, that kind of makes me curious about those things that I was told, that I need somebody in my life to complete me, and I have to get my needs met. And it just got me really, really curious. And what I have seen, what I'm beginning to see when I play around in this arena is it's just not true. It just doesn't fit with how it looks to me. What we're talking about how life is created, how our experience is created. It doesn't fit for me that I need something so that I can feel whole and complete. I need to do something so that I don't feel bored. I need something to change so that I am okay in some way. It just doesn't fit with what is unraveling and what I'm seeing. So I don't know, what do you think about that, Beck? To me, it's an interesting conversation starter, I think.
It is. What's really interesting is when Deb first suggested this topic, so it's probably just about a week ago, because we normally kind of think about our topics the week before, she said this kind of psychological needs, and I had a moment, I think I even looked at it, I was like, I don't even know what that means, Deb. Before we can talk about this, I need to know what it actually means. And what's been interesting is then, as inevitably happens when we bring something into our awareness, we start to see more of it, and we start to become more aware of whatever that is. And so over the last week, since Deb kind of plucked that topic, I don't even know quite where from, it's been something that's been in my awareness. And it's kind of just crystallized to me as Deb was talking, that for me, I think if she'd have said the phrase emotional needs, penny would have dropped instantly.
Oh, okay.
So as you've been talking, I'm like, oh, we're talking about emotional needs, aren't we? I think it was the word psychology that just threw me. I
don't know where that came from. It was just,
and it's quite like, you can see that it is just that it's the same thing. And what we're talking about here is that same thing that you just said, is that we need something outside of us to be okay.
Yeah.
And I know some time ago, many years ago, I did some training, and a part of that training was that as human beings, we have these, and I think there was a list of 10. And interestingly, because I like to do this when I'm talking about stuff that I'm a little bit like, oh, I wonder what I Googled, what are our psychological needs? And there's at least 10 different answers. These are the 7, these are the 3, these are the 11. So there's lots of different schools
so there's not
of psychology.
Even an agreement with what they are.
No, so there's lots of different schools of psychology that have all these different ones. But the training that I'd done some years ago, I think they had a list of 10. I don't think I can remember them all, but the ones that I can remember were we need to have some sense of control, security. There was something to do with achievement and purpose, I remember. But there was a list of about 10 that I got taught. And as Deb's been talking, and they've been kind of coming back to me, oh, we're talking about emotional needs. We're talking about those emotions that it appears to us we feel better when we get those emotional needs met from outside of us, when something is set up so that I feel secure. Somebody pays me £10,000 into my bank and I feel secure. And unless I get that £10,000, I don't feel secure. And what can happen in a lot in sort of psychology and general conversation is that we have like an agreement that that's true. We have it set up that those things come from outside of us. And we all kind of generally, without even considering, and like Deb said, this is a question of, is it true? Let's look at that again. We seem to have this underwritten agreement that that's where those things come from, that our security comes from somebody paying me £10,000. And if I don't get that, let's say that's the place my security comes from, I will look to unhealthy places to get those needs met. So I'll do, or I'll think, oh, I don't feel secure and I haven't got £10,000 to make me feel secure. So I'll block that feeling out by turning to drugs or whatever it might be. There's tons of ways that people do, those kinds of what we might term unhealthy behaviours. And that was definitely my understanding of kind of what psychological or emotional needs were. If we didn't have the healthy things in place to get those needs met, we'd turn to unhealthy behaviours. And for me now, it's just so much less complicated than that. It's just so much easier to come back to knowing that we already have everything we need built in. Like, I am secure. I am love. I am compassion. I am control and yet not controlled. It's like I don't need to control things, because control is one of those needs that I would only need to control something if I had to get security from outside.
Yeah.
Because then if that wasn't going to happen, I'd have to control all these different things to make it happen. So I'm already in control. There's nothing I need to control. That's already happening. So all of those things, whether it's the list of 10 I used to know, or whether it's all the different ones that come up when you Google it, we already have every single one of those things built in. And I know one of the ones we actually started writing a list, didn't we? I don't know if you've got it somewhere, but
probably
we started writing a list of what some people might have set up as their kind of psychological needs.
We'll have so many pieces of paper. I'm a bit of a piece of paper freak.
There it is. I can see it. And I know one of them we wrote down was assertiveness, wasn't it?
Yes.
And when we wrote that down, what we kind of said, particularly, and I think this is relevant for all of them, but it came out particularly when we said that one, was that we already have exactly the right amount of assertiveness that we need in any given moment. We can be assertive if that's what we need to be.
Absolutely.
But that comes from inside of us. We don't have to.
We can be confident. We can be assertive.
All of those
we
things.
Can be self-assured. Everybody has that within them already. You don't gain it from anywhere. It is within you. And in those moments that you need it, you will step up and do that. It's kind of, and definitely for me, I still think there are so many people out there that kind of think, people won't feel lonely if they are a part of a community or if they have a partner or something like that. And to me, this needs to be addressed the exact opposite way. We've come about this. So, okay, so how can we create those things? How can we have, how can we meet those needs in people? And for me, it is absolutely 100% coming at it from the other direction. Because what I have seen in my own life and in the lives of the people that we work with and the people is that when we come from that place of knowing we are whole and complete, the strange thing is then we make amazing communities, because they're communities that are built up not from a place of insecurity, not from a place of you have to do this to meet my needs. And definitely, this is absolutely what I saw within relationships. This is what was life-changing for me around my relationship. And even when I was struggling and coming out of that, people were still kind of, saying to me about that I had these needs and I had to work out ways, I had to be in a relationship with certain people in a certain way so that I could have these needs met. And it leaves us in a mess if we have to do that, which is why, again, it's kind of like getting curious and questioning those things. And if we, if you lack money or something like that and you think, yeah, but security, if you didn't have money, you would really see that, you can't feel secure without it. Or, if you're not in a relationship and you're kind of looking at me and going, well, kind of, it's all right for you. You're in a relationship. You have no idea. Loneliness does come from being on your own. And for me, it's about getting curious for yourself and beginning to see that, I don't know about you, but I've had a few interesting conversations about people and about, how much money makes you feel secure. At what point, how many noughts do you need? How much money do you need to feel secure? And what you see with different people is it varies massively, hugely. If I'd got 50 quid in my pocket, that's it, I'd be done. If I don't have 2 million by the time I'm 36, then I'm never going to be secure. It varies massively. So that kind of gets me a bit curious. So, is it possible to feel secure when you have no money in your bank? Spoiler alert, yes.
You heard it here first.
Trust me, my bank account has looked rather dodgy more than once, and that is not where my security comes from. And I have been in a room of the people that are closest to me and who love me the most, and I have felt lonely, lost, and insecure. And I have been on my own in stormy weather, walking outside on my own, and felt completely and utterly loved and held. So it's kind of, for me, getting curious about those things. We have got that wrong. And also, some of the challenges and things that we're doing to raise awareness, I've really noticed, even when I've been in conversations with people who are around this conversation, which was kind of why this topic came up for me, because I've noticed that it's really, really easy to slip back into believing that sorting these kinds of problems out then is where it's at. And for me, it's always about guiding people back to knowing this deeper truth of who they are, guiding people back to begin to look in the direction of their wholeness and completeness right now in this moment, no matter what is going on and no matter who they believe themselves to be, and kind of beginning to question the fact that money, other people, if I was more assertive, if I was more confident, if I was that kind of little word, if, and then what comes next, if this was different. I'm beginning to see that it works exactly the opposite way around. You will have all the security, all the confidence, all the everything you need when you begin to look in that direction and begin to look for yourself within you, looking in that direction. Then those are the things, the money that you want, the relationship that you want, they will either, it's very likely that they will come. And if they don't, so what? When you know that you're whole and complete, when you really know you don't need that, it's okay anyway. Have we had a comment or a...
Oh, yeah, Steve's just saying, hello, lovelies. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, it is very much that curiosity about the connections we've made between things out there and how we feel in here. And I think for me, it comes back to the tip that I get in the last question.
Oh, no, not tips.
That it's coming back to seeing where our feelings come from.
Yeah.
Loneliness, boredom, being out of control, not feeling secure, all of those things and billions of other psychological or emotional needs that somebody's come up with, all of those feelings come from thought in the moment. They do not come from the stuff outside. And I think Deb's examples were perfect about, we've all felt it, haven't we? We've been in a room full of people and felt lonely, felt isolated, felt unwanted and unloved, and equally been entirely on our own and not felt that at all. And I've had lists of things that, I want to do in my life and felt bored. And yet there's tons of stuff to do, but I feel bored. And those kinds of things, and felt, things like achievement and purpose. I've done stuff with my life. There's things that I've achieved, things that I've done, things that I've strived for and had a purpose for. And yet there's been times when I've felt like there's no reason to get up in the morning. I felt like I've not, compared to that person, I haven't achieved. Compared to this person, I've probably achieved more. And none of that is coming from what's actually going on out there. It's coming from what I'm thinking in that moment. And it is always, always, always about remembering that. Like, this conversation is a simple reminder. Like, that's all we're ever here doing, is reminding you how this works, reminding you that all of those ideas about emotional needs and having to get them from outside of us is just overcomplicating the simplicity of life. And all we ever need to do in this conversation is remind you of that, remind ourselves of that, remind you of that. Come back to the simplicity here. The emotional needs that we think, oh, I've got to resolve these out in the world. I've got to have a partner to feel loved. I've got to have a certain amount of money in the bank to feel secure. I've got to have got this many degrees to have a sense of achievement. None of that needs to happen out in the world when we come back and know that we are whole and complete. And we have all the security and purpose and achievement and love and community in our own hearts.
Confidence, and
all of those
assertiveness, and all of those things that it feels that we need to do something to get them. I've been on all sorts of courses that kind of say, build confidence and do this. And yeah, it never really worked for me. And seeing, what I am prepared to do is hugely different now when I've started to look in this direction. It feels to me like if I need to be confident about something, my confidence is there. It's like a well that you can just draw on at any moment if you need it. And some days I don't feel confident and some days I do, but I don't tell this story about it. It's just if I need it, it appears. And assertiveness, all of those things. It doesn't feel to me like we lack them and we need to build them. It just feels like as we begin to see the truth of who we are, we notice that all of those things are built into us.
It just reminds me of like if you've ever watched any kind of, I quite like these like films that are set in the future, and there's all this amazing technology they've designed where everything's at your fingertips, and it's like you can, I don't know, click your fingers and everything you need is there, or they have one of those magical watches and something pops up in front of them. No, even better than that, Deb.
No.
And everything they need in that moment comes up on an imaginary screen in front of them, telling them all the information they need. That we have that system already
within us.
Like we have that technology inbuilt in us. Like we came fitted with a system that gives us everything we need in the moment we need it. And that, like, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Very, very powerful stuff. So, you know, again, if that's brought up anything for you, if that's brought questions up for you, if you kind of want to agree with us or disagree with us, or, you know, you would like us to discuss anything further, please feel free to leave comments, to contact us. We absolutely love interacting and talking to you. And if you are interested in taking this conversation deeper with us, you want to work with us, we have plenty of ways for you to do that. I'm sure we've spoken about many of them tonight. You know, the mentoring that we're doing. We do have another retreat coming up in June. We have the 5 days of free self-love in our Facebook group. So join our mailing list if you're not on our mailing list, so that you can hear about what it is we're up to, and, you know, get in touch with us. Get in touch with us if you're interested in working with us in any way at all. So what are we going to be talking about next week then?
I'm just going to say hi to Mark, because Colette's just commented to say he's just come in and he said hello. So
hi Mark. We love you too.
So next week, I'm just trying to read the board. Our question is, how do I understand somebody who has different opinions or views to me? And this is off the back of things like maybe racism, anti-Semitism, those kinds of things. Like if someone has a different view around that kind of thing, and political and those kinds of things, the kind of things that can get quite heated when we're quite strongly involved with.
Sometimes you can see them on Facebook when people are disagreeing a little bit.
So how do I understand someone who has a different view to me? So that's our question next week. And our topic is life, the universe, and everything.
Ooh.
And we've only got 20 minutes to do it, so it's going to be great. We'd love to see you next week, and join us tomorrow morning at 9:30 for our challenge day. We'll be doing our live video.
That's going to be on challenge in the group,
in the Facebook
Facebook group.
Yes, we would love to see you there to join in with that.
So if you are not on our mailing list, go and join our mailing list so you don't miss anything we do. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any of the videos that we load up or any of the lives that we do.
Perfect. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great evening. Bye.